Some fires start with a single spark. Others burn from the moment you realize you've been holding your breath for years, waiting for someone to remind you how to breathe. His lips were already pressing against the side of my neck when I whispered the words I hadn't meant to say. Keep going. The phrase escaped before I could catch it, slipping out with an urgency I didn't know I had, a hunger I thought had died years ago. His arms were strong and confident, bracing on either side of me, caging me in a way that felt like both captivity and freedom. The cool leather seat beneath my legs contrasted sharply with the heat building between us, a fire so intense I thought I might combust. Outside, the fog had settled over the quiet street, making the dim orange glow of the streetlight look almost ethereal, like we'd slipped into another world where rules didn't exist, and consequences were just whispers in the distance. Steam fogged the car windows, tracing patterns across the glass like invisible witnesses to our sin, while his breath traced fire along my skin, each exhale burning away another piece of the woman I used to be. My knees nudged against the center console as he leaned closer, his body pressing into mine with a desperation that matched my own. And in that moment, the world beyond the car vanished, dissolved into nothing but sensation and heat, and the thundering of two hearts that had no right to beat in sync. If you've ever felt desire so strong it terrified you, if you've ever stood at the edge of something forbidden and jumped anyway, drop a comment right now. Let me know you understand this feeling. We had pulled over on a deserted road just on the outskirts of our little town, the place where everyone knows everyone's name, but no one really knows anyone at all. The engine had fallen silent, leaving only the subtle sounds of our shared space. The brushing of fabric, the racing of our breaths, the faint creak of leather beneath shifting bodies, the sound of two people who had been dancing around this moment for months, finally giving in. "Are you all right?" he whispered, his voice low, steady, almost reverent, as his face brushed mine, his lips so close I could taste the mint on his breath mixed with something darker, something dangerous. I couldn't answer immediately because the truth was I wasn't all right. I had never been closer to crossing a line I had sworn I would never approach. A line I'd drawn in permanent marker across my conscience, my marriage vows, my entire identity. Yet somehow, despite every rational thought screaming at me, despite the voice in my head that sounded like my mother, my friends, every woman who had ever warned me about moments like this, I wanted more. I wanted everything. I wanted to be consumed. He held me tighter, his fingers digging into my waist with a possessiveness that sent electricity through every nerve ending, and I bit my lip, a nervous, anticipatory gesture that made him groan low in his throat. My body arched instinctively against the seat, pressing into him like I was trying to fuse us together, trying to erase the space between skin and soul. This wasn't where a woman like me should have been. Not here, not with someone like him, not in a steamed-up car on a back road where headlights could expose us at any moment. I had watched him grow up in my backyard, a boy with scraped knees and polite manners, who always called me Mrs. Carter with that sweet, innocent smile that made all the mothers in the neighborhood swoon. Over the years, I had seen him as a friend of my son, an innocent presence in our lives, someone I packed lunches for, someone I bandaged when he fell off his skateboard, someone who was supposed to stay frozen in time as a child forever. But somewhere along the way, between the summers that blurred together and the years that slipped past like water through my fingers, he'd become something else entirely. A man who saw me, truly saw me, not as a mother, not as a wife, not as the woman who organized bake sales and smiled politely at dinner parties, but as a woman, raw and real and starving for the kind of attention that makes you feel like you're the only person in the universe. Where are you listening from? Comment your city and country below. I need to know this story is reaching you wherever you are, that I'm not alone in this beautiful, terrible thing called desire. My name is Alina Carter.
I'm 42 years old, married for 18 years to a man whose touch I can barely remember. Mother to a college-age son who calls once a week out of obligation rather than love. I sell houses in a town where reputations are easier to spread than facts, where gossip travels faster than truth, where one wrong move can turn you from respectable to ruined in the time it takes to brew a pot of coffee. People know my name. They wave at me in the grocery store. They ask me about open houses and interest rates. Yet few notice me anymore. No one sees the woman underneath the press blazers and professional smile. The woman who used to dance till dawn, who used to laugh so hard she'd cry, who used to feel things so deeply it hurt. Everyone, that is, except him. Aiden is 23, my son's longtime friend, a fixture in our home throughout his teenage years, when life still felt manageable and my marriage still had a pulse. He had slept over countless nights, his sleeping bag spread across our basement floor, painted fences under the summer sun with his shirt off and sweat glistening on muscles I definitely shouldn't have noticed. Sat at our breakfast table with unruly hair and boundless ease, eating pancakes like he belonged there, like he was part of our family. Now, years later, he had returned, transformed from boy to man, from innocent to intoxicating. And the way he looked at me, God, the way he looked at me, it made me feel alive in ways I hadn't felt in years, in ways I thought were dead and buried beneath mortgage payments and grocery lists, and the slow suffocation of a marriage that had become nothing more than shared silence. Type yes if you know what it feels like to be invisible in your own life. Type yes if you've ever wanted someone to really see you again. This didn't happen overnight. It started with subtle gestures so small, I convinced myself I was imagining them. A lingering glance in the kitchen that lasted 3 seconds too long, fingers brushing against mine over gardening gloves, and a touch that sent shockwaves through my entire body. Small talk that suddenly felt intimate, loaded with double meanings and unspoken promises. He never pushed, never forced, but slowly, deliberately, with the patience of someone who knew exactly what he was doing, the invisible walls around me crumbled, brick by brick, defense by defense, until I was standing naked in my own desire with nowhere to hide. That night in the car, it was a choice I made, a moment I allowed to unfold, a line I crossed with my eyes wide open and my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. And once it did, once I tasted that freedom, that fire, that feeling of being wanted with an intensity that bordered on obsession, there was no turning back. I felt him pressing into me, his breaths quickening, a mixture of hesitation and hunger in his eyes that mirrored everything I was feeling. Fear and desire tangled together until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I returned it with a desperate passion, with months of pent-up longing and years of being ignored and decades of being told that women like me shouldn't want things like this, shouldn't feel things like this, shouldn't burn like this. I kissed him like I was drowning and he was oxygen, like the world was ending and this was my last chance to feel alive. When I left the car that night, my legs trembling, my lips swollen, my heart shattered and rebuilt all at once, I was not the same woman who had driven there. Something within me had shifted irrevocably, fundamentally, permanently, and I had surrendered to it, embraced it, claimed it as my own. There comes a moment in life when your own name stops resonating, when you hear it called across a crowded room and don't even turn around because it doesn't feel like yours anymore. When it no longer feels like it belongs to you, but to some ghost wearing your face, living your life, sleeping in your bed. For me, that moment came around the 13th year of marriage, though perhaps it began even earlier. Perhaps it started the first time my husband looked through me instead of at me. The first time he chose his phone over my company. The first time he touched me out of routine rather than desire. My husband, Brian, would say my name with the same mechanical detachment one might use to tick off an item on a to-do list. Alina, did you pay the electric bill? Alina, what's for dinner? Alina, I'll be late again. Each syllable empty of warmth or recognition or even basic human interest. And I stopped saying his name often, not from anger, not from spite, but from the slow erosion of feeling, the gradual numbing that happens When you realize your roommates pretending to be lovers, strangers sharing a last name and a mortgage, and absolutely nothing else. That is what years of quiet neglect do. Not one explosive fight, not a single betrayal, not a dramatic moment you can point to and say that's when it ended. Just the gentle wearing away, imperceptible until suddenly everything feels hollow, until you look in the mirror and don't recognize the exhausted woman staring back. Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own life? Comment below. Let me know I'm not crazy.
I maintained order, keeping my home meticulously clean, every surface gleaming, every pillow perfectly placed, creating the illusion of a perfect life, while everything inside me crumbled. But inside I was unmoored, drifting through days that all looked the same, until Aidan returned, muddy and sun-kissed, from the yard work he offered to do, carrying the energy of youth and life and possibility that had long since faded from my world, that I thought existed only in memories and movies and other people's lives. When he knocked on the door one Saturday morning, taller, broader, more grounded than the boy I had known, transformed from teenager to man in what felt like the blink of an eye, the reaction I couldn't control hit me immediately, hit me like a physical force. My voice came out too quickly, too eager, betraying everything I was trying to hide. My laughter too sharp, too nervous, too desperate. My heart too fast, hammering against my chest like it was trying to escape. But when his eyes met mine, really met mine, holding my gaze with an intensity that made me forget how to breathe, it wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't the fond recognition of a boy I used to know. It was acknowledgement, recognition, and something dangerous, something primal, something that had no place between a married woman and her son's friend. Desire. Raw, undeniable, terrifying desire. The knock on the back door startled me one evening when the house was empty and the silence felt suffocating. My heart jumped, not with fear, but anticipation, a thrill that shot through my body like lightning. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour, when respectable married women are supposed to be cooking dinner or folding laundry or doing any of the 1,000 mundane things that fill up a life. I walked slowly toward the door, feeling the soft carpet under my bare feet, suddenly hyper-aware of every sensation. The warmth of the living room lights behind me, the cool air conditioning raising goosebumps on my arms, the way my heartbeat echoed in my ears. Aidan stood there, holding a small bag in his hands, the faint smell of fresh-cut grass clinging to his shirt, his head damp with sweat, his eyes dark with something I recognized, because I felt it too. I thought I'd drop by, he said, scratching the back of his neck nervously. And I love that gesture. Love that he was nervous too, that this wasn't one-sided, that we were both standing on the edge of this cliff together. His usual confidence seemed tempered by hesitation, by the weight of what we both knew was happening. And I noticed the vulnerability in his eyes, the question he was asking without words, the permission he was seeking. Something inside me shifted, clicked into place like a key finding its lock. This wasn't just the boy I once knew. He was a man now, aware of himself and aware of me in ways I hadn't imagined, ways that made my skin flush and my breath catch. I let him in, stepping aside, my hand trembling slightly as I closed the door behind us, sealing us in together, shutting out the world and its expectations and its harsh fluorescent judgment. The tension between us was palpable, but silent, heavy with all the unspoken things we both felt, all the months of building desire and restraint and wondering if the other person felt it too. We sat in the living room talking about trivial matters at first, performing normalcy like actors in a play, discussing my son's latest college project, the strange weather lately, minor town gossip, anything to avoid addressing the electricity crackling between us. But every sentence, every glance carried weight, loaded with subtext and longing. Each shared smile, each accidental touch as he reached for a cup of tea sent ripples through me, waves of heat that started somewhere deep and spread until my entire body hummed with awareness. Hours passed without either of us noticing, time becoming irrelevant when you're sitting across from someone who makes you feel like you're the center of the universe.
The world outside seemed distant, a faint blur behind the curtains. Reality reduced to just this room, just this moment, just us. Eventually, the conversation faded into quiet, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and our synchronized breathing. And I wondered if he could hear my heart pounding, wondered if he knew that every cell in my body was screaming for him to touch me. And then, as if guided by some invisible thread, as if the universe itself was pulling us together, our hands met slowly, deliberately, his fingers finding mine in the space between us. I felt a shiver run up my spine, felt my breath catch, felt the world tilt on its axis. "I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted, softly. His voice almost a whisper, yet it filled the room, filled my chest, filled every empty space inside me with something warm and dangerous and intoxicating. Those 6 words, so simple, so devastating, so impossible to unhear. I didn't answer immediately. Words felt insufficient, inadequate to express the storm of emotions crashing through me. The relief and terror and desire and guilt all tangled together. Instead, I let my fingers intertwine with his, feeling the warmth, the weight, the reality of this connection we had nurtured over months of subtle signals and stolen glances and moments that felt more than they should. Type. I understand. If you've ever felt a connection so powerful it stared you. Type. I understand if you know what it's like to want something you can't have. The night deepened outside. The fog thickened, wrapping our house in a cocoon of secrecy, hiding us from the world and its expectations and its harsh fluorescent judgment. I knew that what we were doing was dangerous, a line that shouldn't be crossed, a boundary that existed for good reasons. Yet I couldn't pull away, couldn't stop, couldn't do anything but lean closer. There was a part of me that had been dormant for years, buried beneath responsibility and routine and respectability. A wild part, a hungry part, a part that longed to be seen, to be wanted, to be alive again. Aiden wasn't just a temptation, wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment or a midlife crisis in human form. He was a reminder that I was still capable of feeling deeply, of burning brightly, of being more than the sum of my obligations. He was proof that I was not dead inside, just sleeping, waiting for someone to wake me up. Eventually he stood, and I knew the night was coming to an end, knew we had to return to reality even though every part of me wanted to freeze time. We didn't speak of what had happened explicitly, but our silence said everything, communicated more than words ever could. He left with a quiet promise in his eyes, a look that told me he understood the gravity of what we shared and would carry it with him, would protect it, would come back for more. Alone in the living room, I finally allowed myself to exhale, release the breath I had been holding for what felt like hours, maybe years. The weight I didn't realize I had been carrying for years lifted slightly, just enough for me to remember what it felt like to breathe freely. I was aware of the storm we had created, aware of the potential fallout, the explosion that could destroy everything I'd built. Yet I also knew something undeniable had shifted inside me, some fundamental truth about who I was and what I needed and what I was willing to risk. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive, awake, present in my own skin. Life returned to its usual rhythm the next day, but nothing felt the same. Nothing could ever be the same again. I moved through my routines with a heightened awareness, every sensation amplified, colors brighter, sounds sharper, my body still humming with the memory of his touch. Every glance, every sound, every interaction tinged with the memory of that night, with the knowledge that we started and where it might lead. Aiden remained a part of my thoughts, a secret flame I carried carefully, hidden from everyone, but burning bright and hot in the darkness of my mind. And though the world would never know, though I would smile and wave and sell houses and play the role of respectable Mrs. Carter, I knew I had chosen to embrace a moment that made me feel more human than I had in years, more real, more myself. I can't undo what happened, and I don't want to. Wouldn't even if I could. Some moments are meant to change us, even if they are fleeting, even if they are dangerous, even if they burn us alive. That night was one of those moments, and I will carry it with me quietly, privately, as a reminder that life doesn't always follow the rules, that desire doesn't care about wedding rings or age gaps or what the neighbors might think. And sometimes that's exactly what makes it worth living. Life doesn't always follow the rules that we set for ourselves, the neat little boxes we try to fit into, the stories we tell ourselves about who we're supposed to be. Some moments change us forever, whether we're ready or not, whether we want them to or not, whether we survive them or not. This story is one of those moments, raw and unforgettable, forbidden, beautiful, and devastating all at once. If this story sets your soul on fire, if you felt every word in places you forgot existed, if you've ever wanted something so badly it terrified you, drop a comment with your city and country. Let me know you're out there. Let me know desire hasn't died in this world of rules and restraint. And if you need to know what happens next, if you're dying to know whether I chose safety or passion, whether I stayed or I burned, hit that subscribe button right now, because part 2 will destroy you in the best way possible. Some fires you can't put out, some hungers you can't ignore. This was mine. What's yours?